Hello, my friends. It is I once more, Rob, here in the lair of omnusI, where we have finished a fun session, certainly an interesting one, of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Tonight, all of my party members were in attendance. The date for today is September 7th, and the group, once more, Otto the Bard, Terran the Fighter, Glim the Cleric, Abar the Paladin, Geth the Sorcerer, Oric the Rogue, and the NPC is Glug the Barbarian. And at this point, the group had finished with several taxing encounters, moving up the hillside to Scarlet Moon Hall, where they had good information that one of the disruptions that was causing the terrible weather and just general maladies had something to do with whatever was at the top of the hall. So the group was going up and trying to get answers. They were met with fireballs from various cultists as they went along. They were getting rather tired of them too. But they fought with bugbears and cultists so far, and were preparing to move further up the hall. So they go along, and after consulting with the druids that they had allied with, who they had proven that the Scarlet Moon Order was a fake, just a haven for these fire cultists, they got the cooperation of the druids, got healed, and continued to move along the path, eliminating the bonfires at the base of the hill. They met with a pair of woodsmen who had heard about the ritual and were interested, and there was no combat. It was just a talking encounter. The two men obviously are more than something's going on with them. The paladin confirmed that there was something unsettling about them, but not overly bad. So they talked civilly, and the two were curious what was going on, curious what the party was doing. But let them pass without any kind of a problem. As a matter of fact, they were so pleasantly pleased with the group that they told them of a rabbit trail that would allow them to stealth up and around the side of the hill to get to the clearing where the next group looked like they had a cultist or two. It was a woman in druid robes, and there were 3 woodsman, rangery types with armor, cooking meat around a fire. Well, Glug insisted that he could cast a spell of silence upon himself because he was a bard. He was challenged on this by the player of a boar, saying, well, go ahead, cast a silence spell on me. He's like, okay. Punched him in the mouth, and for just a second he was like, he punched me in the mouth. It didn't say anything. He was like, there, you silenced for a few seconds. Humor was had by all. He was fine after a short period of time anyhow. So Glug went along with Oric, the thief, or the rogue, up the hill to see what was going on. Glug rolled fairly well. Now you would think, rogue, high dexterity, he'd probably be able to just skirt up that path no problem. Nope. The bad things started for Oric right away. He pooched his roll, and so he slid off the trail and made a bit of noise. To beat that into submission, the bad guys actually rolled really well for their ability to spot and to hear the noise. So they're like, well, what's going on up there? There's a spy spying on us. So, yes, the cultist, the druid was a cultist and threw a fireball up. Well, he's got a ring that allows him to take half damage from area effect spells. So he weathered the fireball rather well. Then the guards pulled crossbows, and everybody was focused on Oric. The rest of the party was going up, and then all of a sudden, oh, fireball, stuff's happening. They start running off to get into the encounter. Glug did not have the falling down problem, and I rolled a 19 for his stealth, so he was a ninja. He just kept going, and he wasn't caught in the fireball. So just as Auric looked like he was going to take another battery of spells and more crossbow fire, all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, Glug can't get up close enough to hit them. The next best thing would be to intimidate them. So he rolled an intimidation, and with every rolling with advantage because he just suddenly loomed out of the darkness into their fire with an axe, and he's like, "I'm going to kill you! I am the knight!" And I rolled a charisma roll for their strength of courage and conviction and such. One botched, and he ran away, dropped his weapon, soiled his armor, and ran away. The two Eternal Flame Guardians, who were standing around the campfire, made their save barely. They soiled their armor, but they didn't run away. The Eternal Flame Priest made her save easily, so she wasn't exactly scared. So then the combat took place. For the most part, Glug rolled a 1 for his initiative, so he didn't get to go. The rest of the group was like charging along, but they didn't get into the fight right away. So Auric is trying to climb up and get back into a position. He poisons an arrow, and the next round he shoots it into the priestess, who makes her saving throw, but it hurt. Glug starts mixing it up with one of the remaining guardians. Excuse me, it's been a long night. So the rest of the group comes up, and to help out Glug, Terran decides he's going to use his action surge to get an extra movement to rush in, so he can get in and help attack. So he comes in, he lays into the person that Glug is attacking. And the rest of the group comes around too. Abor decides he's going to go around, he's going to challenge the other fighter. And through the whole thing, Otto was planning on using silence to try to forestall fireballs. Well, she threw her fireball, and he didn't feel like wasting a spell on one person, so he refrained. Terran went in and was carving into the fighters until he figured Glug had his man, so he went after the spellcaster to forestall more fireballs. Which she had skipped back because she cast mage armor on herself. She wanted to be better defended. She didn't get a chance to cast anything else on herself because Terran was on her like that. And with his chop, butt stroke, with his halberd, can't remember what he's got, but he hit her, rocked her, and swept her because he's a battle master, so one of his moves was a tripping attack. And then Auric came streaking down, making a very good acrobatics roll to nimbly go down the hillside without hurting himself, and finish her off with a dagger strike as she was down. After that, it was just the two guards that they had to fight. The guards, well, I finally looked at their stats, and I'm like, oh, they can make their weapons go on fire, so when they hit, it hurts more. Woof. And Glug knocked one into the fire, and only to find out that the fire doesn't hurt these guys very badly. They're fire cultists, so they take half damage. So he gladly was dancing around in the bonfire while he was lashing out, and Abor and Glug got hurt a bit from this, but eventually they dogpile the two guards, finish them off, roll the bodies, find some potions. The priest had a lockbox on her back that had a couple of potions and a wand. The wand has an elemental spell that I created called Ghostfire, which I'm thinking of submitting for those of you who watch Lair of omnusI as a award for the next Lair of omnusI I do. It should be fun. But anyhow, the group rolled the bodies. They got some money. They found crossbows for everybody if they want heavy crossbows. Not a lot of loot, but, something that keeps them going, keeps them clothed and fed. Then they moved up to talk to the druid they were told was at the final fireplace, or fire pit. And they talked to her, and they were civil, and she was civil, and they told her about the fire cultists, and she was suitably shocked. So she gave them some scrolls to help them on their way and some healing potions. The scroll she gave them was a special one from the Prince of the Apocalypse, Skywrite, which allows them to write out words in the clouds so that anybody who can see the clouds can see their message, which is kind of neat, second level spell. Nothing, that you can use in combat unless you're really creative, but it's a good utility spell that most parties should strive to have scrolls of, even if it's something the sorcerer will never memorize. But it's could be useful. They also got a lesser restorations scroll, I believe. So then the group is now ready to move up. Well, the druid had two sprites, and one of them is mute. His name is Grig. And he wanted to help them because he hates liars. And he definitely now hates these cultists because they're liars. So Grig goes up and he scouts the area for them. So I draw them a map of the encampment and also some idea of what's guarding the encampment. So they find out there's two more of these fire priests in the doorway that they're going to have to get by. And dredging from the vast amounts of gamer lore, the concept comes up. It's night, they can't see very well, and we have all these robes lying around. They won't see the blood stains. So those who aren't dwarves get dressed up in cultist robes, or attired as cultist warriors, and they move along to, talk about it. And one of them, I can't remember who, was grumbling. Geth was grumbling about having to carry this great axe that the half-orc had. And they're like, well, why are you carrying such a worthless weapon? He's like, well, it's for him. And he's like, yeah, see? Grab, whack. Hits one of them. Which was not attacking them on the cue. Glug kind of ruined things a little bit, but he's a glug of action. So he wasn't for all the sneaking around. So he attacked one for their surprise round. Then everybody rolled for initiative to pounce on them. While they hit the fire priest, because they don't wear great armor, mostly relying on spells for their protection, these guys were fanatical enough that they both detonated off a fireball at ground zero to catch everybody in the party and themselves. Now, they were taking half damage because they're resistant to fire, which is fine. But realistically, from the damage that they had taken, they weren't going to survive very long. It was the move of a fanatic, and they were. So they basically did a little mutually assured destruction, made sure they wreaked heavy damage on the whole party. The party at this time, the fire resistance spell from Janelle was gone. So they took some damage. Glim went down from damage, and so did Glug, because Glug, they didn't take a 1 hour rest. They were rushing, so he was still wounded from the first fight, and those fireballs, he didn't make both of his saving throws. So he goes down. They mop that guy up, no problem. Glug ends up getting a healing potion. They heal him. Otto brings back Glim. And so the next step, they go into a courtyard. There's the Wicker Giant, this huge burning structure. There's one person in the middle of the courtyard who calls up, "Arise and destroy the infidels!" Oh, I gotta be careful when I wear this thing. "Arise and destroy the infidels!" And they knew that there were a couple of guards with crossbows up on the tower that's before them. There's some scaffolding, and the guards are up there. But they're more worried about this fire thing. It screams out trap, maybe a fire elemental, what have you. The guys are veteran enough, they recognize that. So they turn around and they attack her for everything they have. But because there was some warnings, I mean, there's fireballs going off all down the hillside, and we all know who uses the fireballs, they were on alert. So the fire elemental was half summoned anyhow. And when the fireballs went off on the gate, she was immediately trying to get the fire elemental to come and help in the fight. The guards had plenty of time to load their crossbows and get ready. So when the party moves in, they get raked by crossbow fire. She's trying to summon the fire elemental. The fire elemental finally shows up. And that's when the horror began. You see, the group can be rather streaky. There are some times when they can't fail at anything. To start off the night, I believe the player running Geth rolled a couple of 20s in a row, getting critical strikes on his chill touches and for knowledge checks. Flip that around, the player playing Terran, who is a very well-built fighter, very competent, he was rolling nothing but 1s. So Glim runs up to attack her and misses. He rolls a 1 and then uppercuts and completely misses and almost loses his weapon. Terran's like, hold my beer. He comes over and he whacks Glim with his halberd. Okay. Glim goes down. From the fire elemental coming along giving him a hug because he was closest to the fire elemental. And, fire elemental, he's cute. I originally wanted to use the fire elemental from the new Massive Darkness game, but he's really just kind of big and gray, and until this gets painted, it doesn't quite evoke the same thing, even though it looks a little bit more like the Wicker Man thing did. But the fire elemental quickly ate up all the wicker, so rawr. I love these translucent plastic figures. So Glim succumbed to the mass attacks of his own group and the fire elemental. And Otto got him up with a healing word and moved in to attack the woman, who made herself invisible with a potion real quick, figuring she was going to reposition herself to try to do more damage. And she settled with a Burning Hand spell that caught the 3 fighters in the group. Well, they made their saving throws or weathered the damage. So Terran rolls another 1. And he whacked again, with my critical failures, if you roll a 1 and something could happen, I let you roll again just to see what could have happened. Most of the time, if you roll, you're not trying anything too difficult, and you roll a 1, and then you roll like a 10 or 12, nothing happens. If you roll a 10, if you roll a 1 and then maybe a 20, maybe you fail, but something okay comes out of it. If you roll a 1 and then another 1, and you're doing something somewhat risky, it's probably going to come out badly for you. So, in this case, Terran swings, but he's, using pole weapon fighting, so he attacks with one end and then bashes with the other. And he whacked poor Glim again. So their cleric is getting brutalized by his own party members. And then he gets raked with more crossbow fire at the same time, because he's, again, a visible target. And at this point, it almost looks like Terran is fighting for the other side. He's done more damage than anybody else. At this point, Glug moves up to engage the fire elemental. Auric tries shooting the gal and hits her again. All told, when he's really getting his sneak attack, when everybody else is fighting and he's fighting alongside, he is contributing quite a bit, and he's getting a good hit rate. I'm not going to say he's quite the MVP of the group, but he always manages to be around to strike that death blow so they don't get another attack in. You could probably count a lot of the kills are the rogue being opportunistic and playing smart D&D. So she finally drops. I think it was Auric again who finished her off. And they're still getting raked by arrow fire, but now there's this elemental here. And the champion against the elemental quite clearly was a boar. A boar had used his paladin's thunderous smite ability. He used, I believe, 3 of them. And the thunder damage rocked the elemental. A very nasty foe at their level. What finished it off? Geth pulls out his big whooping sticks. seeing that this is a nasty monster, and he throws a Witch Bolt, which is a wonderful new spell. I really like it, but it's an all or nothing thing. He's casting it at second level. It's normally a first level spell, so he's going for more damage, and it requires it to hit roll. The elemental isn't a hard target to hit. His first spell went awry. Threw it again the second time, though, and it could not resist the thunder damage that or was it lightning? I think it's lightning damage that the Witch Bolt was cranking into it. 2 rounds of that was more than the elemental could take at that point after everybody else continued to beat on it, so it finally got snuffed out. So then the party could turn and concentrate on the 2 guys who've been shooting them with crossbows. Their thought was, they're up in the scaffolds. Well, let's fell the scaffolds, instead of climbing up and trying to fight them that way. Good idea. It's the execution that's the problem. A sequence of 1s and 2s on different ability checks commenced. Many of them did not have good destruction-based weapons, so they were just trying to use their physical strength, which they have on tap, to try to knock the scaffolding down. Glug tried at first and rolled poorly, so then he started using his great axe to chop timbers, and actually Abor used his halberd to good effect and chopped through some vital timbers too, making better tactical strikes rather than the big smashing strikes that Glug was doing. But they weakened it to the point where if they did 10 or more points of chopping damage, it knocked the difficulty down to affect the scaffold by 1. Which was great, because at that point, Terran rolls a 1 and tackles poor... He slips off of his post and just tackles Glim, who himself rolled poorly and was down on his knees as the gravel skittered under his boots. So they're flailing around on the ground and getting shot by crossbows for their effort. All the others who weren't chopping all pretty much pitched in, except for Auric, who was taking pot shots, and Geth, who pulled out the wand of magic missiles that they've got, and he was cranking magic missiles out at the archers. And they eventually did drop one of them. However, after several misadventures, honestly, the scaffold was the MVP villain of the group. Almost killed 2 of the group outright, and they just could not affect it. Terrible dice rolls, wasted actions, left and right. They just didn't have the right things to do that kind of structural damage until finally Glug and I think it was Abor again had weakened it to the point where they were able to knock it and knocked it away so that the archer was kind of left dangling, holding onto the supports, no longer braced by the wall. And then Geth cast a chill touch up his leg, because I occasionally will use my random hit location die, and it loves legs and arms. I don't know why, but I roll more of those than anything else. So I don't know, maybe battlefield historians can confirm that looking over people who died in hand-to-hand combat, if almost all of them had their hands and legs hacked up far before the torso or head got hit in combats. That's actually possibly fairly realistic. But anyhow, it happens all the time. I think I rolled 50% in hitting people's right legs tonight. So finally, he got chill touched up the leg, botched his roll to hold on to the scaffold, and fell. Didn't die outright because it was the first time he'd taken damage, but then the rest of the group got ready to pounce. Just as they got ready to pounce, a howl came, and they knew that there was a hellhound penned in a nearby section of the tower area. That's where we left it. The hellhound is coming. They can hear its voice. They're beat up. They're not, only a couple of them are really savaged, but they're out of healing spells. I don't know how they're sitting on potions right now. I know they have some healing potions left, but I believe their spellcasters are running critically low on spells. And they're not even in the tower yet. They're just going after the perimeter, so it's going to be an interesting time. it's going to really be a time for their fighters and to step up and pick those dice up and start rolling well to try to give the casters chances to catch their breath without relying on their heavy hitting spells. So that's where we ended the night. So until next time, I am Rob here in the lair of omnusI. That's my State of the Dungeon address. I hope you enjoyed it. We had a great night tonight, and I thank you for tuning in. If you liked this video, please subscribe. We'll keep telling these every week, and some nights they can be very funny. Thanks again, and I'm hoping you have very profitable adventures in your future. Farewell.